Welcome to another live edition of Stuck in My Mind podcast. I am your host, WIZE, and I have a very special guest. He is an MIT physicist, Apple evangelist, a spiritual entrepreneur. Welcome to the show, Dr. Ernie.
Thank you so much, Wise. It's an honor to be here.
Oh, pleasure's all mine. Thank you for not having me pronounce your last name. I don't think I pronounced it the right way. But how you doing today?
Doing good. My dog wanted to come in and say hi. He likes to Zoom bomb.
We accept. We are a dog-friendly show. We have dogs come on. We've had cats go across the screen. My grandson is a frequent visitor of my show.
Yeah.
But family and is always important.
Yeah, it's actually funny. This is my first day kind of being home alone because the kids are back in school after 3 weeks, and actually even before that we had family over, and so it's been a long time since I've had the house to myself. So I have a relatively quiet environment for podcasting, which is nice.
So that's good. Yeah, but like I said, we're family friendly. So yeah, on occasion the grandson will come in and make his appearance made, but it's all. That's why I love doing the show. Is stuff like that. There's moments like that where you get to enjoy just life. Things happen. So
yeah.
So Dr. Ernie, what led you on this path of being a spiritual entrepreneur, showing people and all this?
Goodness. I guess the best way to start the story is before I was born, when my parents moved from India to the US in 1967. And so they arrived in the summer of 67 in Chicago, and I was born in October, right during their first winter here in North America, which was quite an adventure for them. And as a consequence of that, I grew up bicultural. And what they sometimes call an ABCD, an American-born confused Desi, in that my older brother, who was born in India, bizarrely seemed to be more Indian and more American than I was. So I grew up with a strong sense of cultural dislocation. And the way I coped with that, looking back, I would say, was by studying physics and theology, kind of a hunger for absolutes. And that led me, as you mentioned, to get my undergraduate degree at MIT in physics, followed by a graduate degree in physics. And when I left the physics market, and really the whole physics industry was kind of imploding in the mid-1990s. So like many PhDs of my generation, I went into management consulting for 2 years, which was a great job at 40 hours a week and a miserable lifestyle at 80 hours a week. And so through a bizarre series of events, I ended up at Apple Computer right during the beginning of the second Steve Jobs era. Thought I'd stick around for a few years, ended up staying there for 17 years. And surprisingly, after all that time, I got bit by the entrepreneurship bug and decided to go do a startup, which led to a marvelous series of misadventures. And I've said that I've often said my autobiography, I want to call it All the Right Mistakes, the hilarious failures and improbable success of a physicist in Silicon Valley. And so I'm still kind of on that quest of trying to understand the world, trying to understand myself, trying to understand how it all fits together. And I guess what I'd say is I've acquired different skills and tools in my tool belt. Tools of theology, tools of physics, tools of management consulting, tools of product management at Apple, tools of entrepreneurship over the last 7 years. And probably the triggering event most concretely for me was 9/11. So I was kind of radicalized by 9/11 in a strange way, in that I'd been fairly conservative before then in a variety of dimensions. And what I noticed, like, nobody I knew was expecting anything like 9/11. They were complaining about all sorts of different problems, all sorts of different issues. And then 9/11 happened. And suddenly, everyone I looked to for advice and insight said the exact same things they were saying before 9/11, only louder. And it's like, wait, you didn't see this coming. And all you take from this new information is that you're more right than you were before. That doesn't make sense to me. Like, it feels like we need better answers than we were getting. And that led me on a extraordinary series of quests, which were initially intellectual and later became career quests, to figure out what exactly is going on with civilization. Interestingly, there's actually a name for it now. It's sometimes called the meta crisis. The fact that, like, pick any crisis you care about, like, say, education. Like, our kids are really struggling with education. It's like, well, okay, well, that's tied into the fact that our governmental systems are horribly dysfunctional, which is tied into the fact that our political systems are horribly dysfunctional, which are tied into the fact that our religious systems are horribly dysfunctional. And, like, every crisis seems to be tied to all these other crises. And the best definition I heard of it, it's a lack of an ability to make sense of our world. And it's kind of the same thing I experienced in a relatively, looking back, small way in 9/11. It's like, wait, I have a way that I think about the world, and I think about myself, and I think about who the good guys are, and who the bad guys are, and what's real and what's fake. And that is sufficient for helping me get through the world. It may not be right, it may not be moral, but it works. And after 9/11, I hit that crisis 20 years before everybody else of like, wait, the world is no longer making sense. All the things I believed are true seem to be completely made up. What's going on? And so I don't say I claim to have a lot of answers, but I have 20 years of a head start in coping with the insanity of how the world is presenting itself. And it gives me at least a few hints of constructive things to do to move forward. It's kind of a rambling answer to your question, but hopefully it gets the conversation going.
No, it got me going. Because if you look, I look at it like our education system. You touched on that. It is horribly broken. Like, and then now with the pandemic, it's even set it back even more than it already was. Because I can remember when the kids would come home, they would have. Like when I went to school, I went to school in the early 80s and 90s. And so even then they started cutting programs for us, but we still had music, we still had other arts programs and all these other things that a lot of these kids are lacking now. They don't get the all, and then even the teachings that they're teaching them, it is completely flawed. It needs work. Because for years it's been the mentality's been go to school, get an education, work somewhere 30, 40 years, and retire, and then enjoy the rest. Like, but we're not being taught how to enjoy life now, how to enjoy the times that we have now compared to. That's why for me, not everyone's not meant to be an entrepreneur. So if you do want to be an entrepreneur because your dream, your thought of it's going to give you a lot of freedom at first, no, it's going to be a lot of work and dedication.
Yeah. I mean, the way I like to say it is that the world has shifted as part of the meta crisis and everything else tied into that, from a world where if you picked the right team to be on, then you were fine, to a world where we have to grow up. We have to say, I have to decide who I want to be and what kind of person I want to be in the world. And I have to be willing to form shifting alliances and negotiate to have a meaningful life. The gig economy is perhaps overblown, but like you said, I mean, the world of work for 40 years died in the 90s, yeah. Right? 30 years ago, and it's not coming back. And like 30 years from now, I don't even know if like a job, like where you have one full-time job, is actually going to be a real thing. Is it just a series of entrepreneurships and projects and universal basic income? I don't know, but you're right. The point I think you were making is that the system we had was designed for a certain set of assumptions about the economy, about what human beings were capable of, about what we needed, what the country needed, etc. And it worked remarkably well for about a century. You know, it had its issues all the way along the thing, but it more or less worked.
Mm-hmm.
And now the divergence between the original world it was designed for and the world we find ourselves now is vast and growing. And we lack even the conceptual and perceptual tools to clearly see what is happening, much less actually fix things. And, you know, it sounds kind of dark when you put it that way, but there's an old joke. I'm trained as a physicist. I hang around with a lot of engineers, and I keep explaining to people I'm not an engineer. I'm a physicist. And they say the difference between a physicist and engineer is when an engineer is working on a problem and discovers that nobody has worked on that problem before, they get depressed because it means they have nothing to take and use. When a scientist is working on a problem and discovers that no one's worked on it before, he gets excited because it means he gets to break new ground. And so the fact that so many things are broken down is, in a really perverse and horrible way, exciting for someone like me, because A, I always felt like a stranger and alien and the world didn't make sense. And so I have a sort of Schadenfreude, like, you know, welcome to my world. And like, this is fun. We have the opportunity. I don't know if this was deliberate or not, but your little teaser at the top of the page here says, what would it take to disrupt/reform society?
Yeah.
And like, this is a question we get to ask in a profound way, in a way that has not been asked for over 1,000 years. So that's one piece that's exciting for me personally. But the positive note that I would give people is that we are way better equipped than our ancestors were to answer that question. I mean, we see so many things going wrong. Things seem so fragile. But, you know, I have to say, society is remarkably resilient. When COVID hit 2.5 years ago, like, I stared into the abyss and said, you know, there is a 1% chance, 3% chance that the world literally goes to hell. That society breaks down, people stop picking up trash, delivering groceries. Like, it's not likely, but it's possible. You know?
There's a
And you know,
possibility.
there were places in, you know, Wuhan and New York City where things got like kind of close to that, you know? And it's like, okay, but we didn't. We pulled back from the brink. We had our moments. Boy, do we have our moments. But like, the trash is still picked up. The grocery stores still have food. So like, okay, civilization endures. And I'm grateful for that. You know, I'm kind of embarrassed by that because I know about the horrors and the exploitation. But like, you know, if you don't have a functioning society, you don't even get to ask questions about exploitation and justice.
It kind of, it's like, it had like COVID and everything that went on and stuff. For some people, it was like, for me, it was life altering in the case where I found my purpose and I found what I wanted to do. I found that podcasting and being able to share my story and have people come on and share their stories and just to come on and have some great conversations, that excited me. That doing this made me like, okay, this is fun. It's me learning because I'm learning from a lot of different people and I'm developing and growing from it. And it's also me sharing these episodes with other people so that they can benefit from it as well. And this wouldn't have happened had I not been furloughed from my job.
Yeah, I think they said that someone said, you know, most people when this happened were really depressed and upset, except for social entrepreneurs, people who are very missional in their mindset and self-motivated. And those people got excited because they've always been saying society is broken. And now everyone's agreeing with them and we have a chance to actually fix some of it.
Yeah. It's given me the opportunity to develop skills that I didn't know I was capable of. It was just, okay, I have a career. I'm a table games dealer. I get paid well. but this here gives me an opportunity to really go into depth, because I'm just being able to have these conversations that with people I probably wouldn't have been able to have prior to the pandemic. Because
Hmm.
as soon as everybody got locked down, everybody was looking for content. Everybody was looking for something to do. Zoom
Yeah.
was at its
Normal.
highest.
Yeah.
All these platforms like streaming are developed and grown, and and, and so
And like emailing a random person on the other side of the world and say, hey, would you like to jump on a Zoom call and talk and have it recorded publicly, suddenly became a normal thing.
yeah, it did. And I've spoken to people all over the world, and who I would have never known this was gonna. I would not like it wouldn't have been a
It wasn't
thought.
a thing.
No, it
Right.
wasn't a
Yeah.
thing
It
for
wasn't.
me. It was a thing
It
for other
wasn't.
people, because other people were still podcasting and stuff before. But
Yeah.
I had wanted to do a podcast. But it was going to be completely different. It had nothing to do with what I'm doing now. It was going to be strictly sports and entertainment and stuff. But it didn't never happen. It didn't materialize. Me and the guy really didn't have a chance to. So when I got furloughed, I was like, you know what? I can't wait for other people.
Yeah.
Decided to finally press record, and here we go.
And then press publish, which is
And
even
yeah, that's
scarier.
even scarier. Yeah, and recording was the easy part. It was just actually having the balls to actually upload it and hit publish. Like, and it's funny
Yeah.
because I didn't know anything. I didn't know about descriptions, thumbnails, titles. I just wanted to upload it and just get it out there.
Yeah. It's funny. They used to talk about the aristocratic virtues of the Romans and the Greeks of courage and wisdom. And we are entering an era where courage and wisdom are more valuable than ever before. More valuable than raw intelligence, more valuable than physical strength, even more valuable than money. Having courage and wisdom. One man with courage and wisdom can, a Greta, can out run circles around, 1,000 billionaires. It's a scary world. I don't want to minimize the challenges or the risks,
Well, no, it
but
is.
the thing that I think you're demonstrating is that if you dig deep enough, there is something within you that relishes the challenge and will rise to it. And that's the kind of the note of excitement I have and encouragement I have for your listeners, who are people who are either trying to start something new or getting unstuck or trying to figure out what's next. Is like the challenge is real, the struggle is real. But as I like to tell, I worked with a Rotary group when we did a Kickstarter that against all odds succeeded in building a bridge in my tiny little hometown. And I said to them, there's two things I want you to learn from this. You are stronger than you think you are, and you're not as smart as you think you are. Because all of us looked at this and said, this is probably not going to work, But we literally couldn't imagine what we couldn't imagine. And the people who showed up and sacrificed and innovated, and how little small gestures had a huge impact because it gave people hope and encouragement and inspiration. And just realizing, like, I'm not smart enough to know what's going on. I can't figure everything out. And therefore, it is arrogant for me to feel despair. It's okay to feel grief, but it is cowardly to face despair, because despair says everything that's going to happen and that none of it's going to work out. But to say, hey, this is reality, and if I face it head on, I'm just going to gamble that there's something within me that will rise up, or something in the universe that will rise up and meet me, so that we can move forward around the things that are actually worth risking for. And that as we do that, and that becomes the norm rather than the exception as the world changes around us, I think we're actually on a cusp, a very long cusp, but nonetheless the cusp of a new golden age of human flourishing. I really believe that. I don't know how much it's going to cost, personally or culturally, or how long it's going to take. But people like you, every time I see someone like this, and people like this are all over now, like people who said, my God, this is broken. I'm not going to wait. I'm going to do my part to help build a better future. And the more people who stand up and do that, and the more we find each other through podcasts like this, the world gets a little bit brighter, despite all the darkness. And that's why, at the end of the day, I'm an optimist.
Oh no, I agree with you. This is giving me so much hope and the conversations and even the messages that I receive from people when they say, "Hey, this certain episode, thank you. I needed to hear that episode." That it was an episode where me and a friend of mine from high school, he's a very successful real estate agent in Brooklyn, and we just did an episode. We talked about networking. We talked about setting goals, mindset, and everything. And we had another friend who listened to the episode. She reached she sent me a message, and she was like, it was just listening to you guys speak on everything you guys are doing and all the experiences you guys are having. And she's like, I had been on the fence about starting a business, but listening to you guys, knowing growing up with you guys and knowing who you guys are, has inspired me to go ahead, take that leap and jump. And so it's messages like that you go like, thank you. Like this is why I do the show.
Yeah.
Is to get messages from people like that. Hey, thank you for inspiring me, for taking that leap. And that's what that's all we can do, is to help inspire and motivate people to do great things. We have a purpose here. And
I had a little blurb I wanted to share actually about for your listeners. So the two big lessons, or maybe the one big lesson that I want to kind of leave people with, is these two paradoxical thoughts. One is that life is a winnable game. That there is a way to win at life. And that even though the deck can seem stacked against you, even though everything you thought was true turned out not to be true, to hold on to the belief that life is a winnable game, in tension with the fact that the dominant strategy for winning that game is learning how to lose well. The way to become a winner is learning how to lose. And if you are willing to learn how to humble yourself, how to grieve, how to face uncomfortable truths, that's how you set yourself up for winning. Whereas if you get stuck in your own mind, stuck with the way things used to be, you will lose. The only way to win is by losing.
It's funny that you bring that up, because this is something me and my nephews always talk about. We talk about participation trophies. We are not for them. I remember playing Little League baseball, and if my team sucked, we didn't get the big trophy. So that would upset us and push us and motivate us for next year to come and go get the big trophy. But when you give everyone a trophy,
yeah, and the thing that is hard, and
people don't realize that there are moments in life that you will win and lose.
Yeah, I mean, there's two. This is actually one of the things that I struggle with a lot, is this tension between acceptance and achievement. The yin and the yang, right? Because on the one hand, it's like, yes, the world's out there. I must conquer it. I must win. It sucks when I lose. I need to put all efforts into it, right? And that is absolutely an important way to look at the world. It's usually called some of the sort of the masculine energy, if you will. But there's also from which is like, hey, can't we all just get along? Why doesn't, does it really matter that much? You're okay just the way you are. And this is the crazy thing. Both of those things are true. And both of them are incomplete. Right? I mean, I
combined the two.
and try to find that right balance and actually, no, that was the little pitch I wanted to share with you. I've used this on a couple other podcasts. I like to say, people often say you should follow your heart. And I said, I think it's close. I think it's better to follow your aorta, which is an acronym, AORTA, also the name of a large blood vessel coming out of the heart. And aorta stands for ambition, openness, risk, thankfulness, and awareness. And I think it's good to start with, I mean, obviously you want to start from a place where you're feeling accepted and loved and belonging, but kind of when you're in that place, you just kind of sit there, right? If you're perfectly happy in the womb, you ain't moving, you ain't doing much. And there's a joy and a beauty in that. And I love going on a silent retreat and all the sorts of stuff, but that's a break from actually being in the world. And once you're in the world, you need to find an ambition, something you care about, something that matters. Andy Stanley likes to ask the question, what breaks your heart? Steve Jobs' question of, where do you want to make a dent in the universe? And pick something, and it's good to have an ambition, but the first, after you have an ambition, don't just run out and do stuff, because that's where you tend to make lots of stupid mistakes, and I've done that many times. First, open your mind. Learn as much as you can about what's going on. Take the time. Don't make it open-ended. Give yourself a time limit so you don't procrastinate, but try to understand everything that's gone before, or at least all readily available knowledge relevant to the thing you care about. And then don't get stuck in analysis paralysis. Then you actually have to risk something. And if you're smart, you try to risk something that you can survive without. and then you take that risk, and then sometimes you succeed, sometimes you fail. But sometimes what I've discovered, and this gets into from the sort of the masculine energy to the feminine energy, is to just be thankful. My first startup lasted 3 months and $30,000 before it failed spectacularly, which I was quite proud of, because I have friends who've done 2 years and $2 million before they failed spectacularly. So I like to think I was ahead of the curve. But it was, physically, emotionally, financially, the most devastating thing I ever experienced. But it was absolutely the right mistake to make, because I learned so much about myself, who I was, who my friends were, what really mattered to me, that I could not have learned any other way. And that's, I think, how you reconcile this sort of hard driving ambition with, okay, I did my best. It sucks that we failed, but I'm still thankful. And the reason I think this is important, and I think I understand where the people who are against the trophy thing come, the victory loser thing, is there is a thing such as toxic shame. And in a competitive environment, healthy shame is where you realize I can be more than this. I need to try harder. Toxic shame is I suck. The system is rigged against me. I should just give up. And we don't have a good way to distinguish between those two. And the same race, one person can have healthy shame, another person can have toxic shame, and different personality types tend to notice one or the other or respond in different ways. And so, and I often think of shame as fundamentally anti-learning. When I feel shamed, it's like my dog rolling on his belly. I just give up. I'm not going to try anymore. And there's a place for that in the world, but it keeps us from moving forward as individuals in a society. And so, do your best, try your hardest, but at the end, make sure that you grieve and end up in a place of thankfulness. And the thing that really for me is key to being thankful is treasuring self-awareness. The more I learn about myself, the more grateful I am for everything that's happened to me, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think that's really the secret to losing well, right? It's not just losing, but losing well, losing in a way where you realize, as I often say, startups, entrepreneurship is burning ego to buy wisdom, right?
And
you take your ego and your ambition, you put it out there, and it flops. And it's okay.
And you learn the hard way. And you learn the hard way.
And you pick yourself up and go again. And a lot of it is learning. One of the things you learn is how much can you safely risk so that you can cycle through this faster rather than blowing it all in 2 years, $2 million, and then being bankrupt, homeless, and what was it? Bankrupt, divorced, and homeless. Your man Joe Rickard, who was on a few episodes ago.
Yeah.
And like, I did not end up there. I was close enough I could stare it in the eye. Like, this could happen, and by the grace of God, it didn't. But and I think this is the thing that I want us to be teaching kids, right? And finding little glimmers is like find something you're passionate about, give it your best, fail in a safe environment, and realize that even if you failed at this achievement, this was not your identity. Your identity is becoming the person who learns from these things, so you become stronger, wiser. Like, maybe you don't play that game, you choose a different game.
So I had a guest on, and she's a fellow podcaster, and she's strictly audio. And so she finally decided to go do video, but she didn't. At first, she was hesitant. So when she was a guest, she was like, "Oh, I commend you for doing lives. I commend you for doing video." She's like, "I'm not ready yet. I'm waiting for the perfect moment." And I'm like, "Yeah, no, you messing up right there. You're already messing up." She's like, "Huh?" I says, "Yeah. How you supposed to learn? Like, how you supposed to do? How you supposed to know what you're doing if you're not doing it? How are you supposed to fail if you don't know what failure is? Like, you're failing already right now by you even making up excuses that I can't do it right now because I need it to be perfect. There's no perfect. There's no perfect in what we do here. There's some things are always gonna pop up. Something's always gonna pop up. Technical difficulties there's never gonna be perfect.
Yeah, but
So why wait till perfect?
and like I said, take the small risk. Like, if you're not sure about doing this, do it here first. Don't go on, Good Morning America for your first time.
And I pointed it out to her. I was like, "Well, you're doing video now. This is a live show. This is video.
Yeah, and this is a safe place. And like that's the thing.
And I'm like, and you're doing fine.
Yeah.
So
and I think that's
video.
And I think there's a huge opportunity in this of creating safe places for people to take small risks where it's normalized.
Yeah.
Right. It used to be like, if you're on TV, you're on TV. It's a big deal. Right. But now, like, hey, we're just on video. It's just us, and I'm learning to relish that. Like, when I was at Apple, I had to be really careful everything I did and said in public, because Apple was hyper scrutinized, and one casual comment could like ruin everyone's day. And like, it's great not being at Apple, so I can get here, I can talk about the economy and big tech and all these things, and not have to worry about ruining other people's day if I make a small mistake. And maybe someday I'm at another small startup. Maybe someday it'll be big. Maybe someday I'll be a public figure and I'll have to worry about these things. But when I hit my point of staring into the abyss, and I was like on the verge of losing everything, I said, well, the upside of this is nobody has any expectations left of me because I've already blown past all of them. So I can stop self-censoring myself, worried that I'm going to make other people look bad. I've already kind of hit that rock bottom, and I actually have an extraordinary freedom that comes with that I did not have when I was rich and high status and fully employed, and looked up to. And realize, and that's part of the awareness part, is that the very things that we think of as the trappings of success are also chains that slow us down. And learning to really embrace the things that you're embarrassed by, that feel awkward and uncomfortable, like, those are actually your hidden strengths. There are things that you can do that the rich and the powerful, there's things you can think that the rich and powerful are not even allowed to think, because they couldn't function in their world if they allowed themselves to doubt. And so there is such an extraordinary range of opportunities in this new world for people to become far more than they ever imagined. It is not easy. It is not cheap. It is not pain-free, but it is possible.
It is. It is. Just look at all. Just look at podcasting. Just look at it's and it's funny because people, 3 million something there's 3.5 million podcasts or something like that. But if you check out at really how many of those podcasters still active,
Yeah.
it's not even half.
Yeah.
It's,
And yeah. And you know, the number of people who are willing to actually put time into doing it, you know, every
and
week, every month.
that's where a lot of people, that's where you start really seeing the people who are dedicated. Because after a few episodes, especially being independent, not having a big company to be editing and promoting and doing all that for you, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So they're dropping like flies. But me wanting to learn and grow, and so I started looking for information, started going out and seeking the knowledge I needed to help me grow my podcast, to help me, okay, who has the best equipment? What kind of equipment should I use? What video? Because to me, it was more than a hobby now. It was people actually are listening to the podcast or tuning in, and now I have to give them quality. I have to make sure
Mm-hmm.
my sound is correct, my video is correct,
Mm-hmm.
making sure I have the right programming to deliver on said product, and
Yeah.
so it's just been crazy, like, because like you said, it's you, if you go out and you want to learn and grow and do all these things, there's some amazing things you can do.
Yeah.
The knowledge is out there. I was I'm shocked that people don't do it more, but I'm always looking, like, people always asking, oh, how do I do this in podcasts? I'm like, really, if you really want to do your work and do the research, it's not that hard. It's just time consuming.
Yeah, my joke with my son was like he likes like watching stuff on YouTube, how-to
Yeah.
videos, math, history stuff. I said, and like I would go yell, son, stop learning. It's time to go to school.
That makes sense. That does make sense. Like, but I think we go to school so we could develop our social
Well, you know,
aspect.
actually, funny talking about education. You know why education is so hard to fix and why it seems so maladapted? Fascinating little bit of history I uncovered. Uh, the reason public education started was this guy named Comenius, who was a bishop. Actually, the Moravians were this amazing group of people prior to the Protestant Reformation. Um, and he was kind of the last one. And this was during kind of the tail end of all the religious wars in Europe. And he realized that because of the Protestant view of everyone should be learning and making up their own mind, if Protestant countries could educate their kids, they would outcompete the Catholic nations. And so the hidden subtext of public education was always nation building rather than individual flourishing. And that's why we have state standards and national standards and one size fits all and a status system of grading A to F for the good and the bad for those who are most compliant and conformant to the national ideal. And this is kind of the general theme that I talk about, is that, you know, especially in the meta crisis, is that the hard thing is to understand the real problem and find the right point of leverage for making a difference. When I was at Apple, it was the transition from macOS System 7, or macOS 8 as it later became known, and macOS 10, what we now call macOS, which is the basis of the iPhone and everything else that Apple's done over the last 20 years. And Apple realized that the system they were working on that had gotten them there, that was groundbreaking in 1984, was a joke by 1994. 10 years it had gone from cutting edge to being ridiculous. And they realized that their very foundational assumptions of what software was were totally wrong. And so they had to sort of have this reverse acquisition with Next to get a whole new operating system from a whole different lineage, because the foundations of what they needed to build on, like, you couldn't build all these wonderful applications you wanted on top of a shaky foundation. Okay. And the reality is that the kind of the basic idea of the meta crisis, a lot of our foundational ideas of what it means to be human were remarkably good approximations, but they're falling down horribly. And it worked, remarkably well for 200 years. But, the very assumptions we had about what is a nation, what is a human being, these were things that they were actively discussing and debating back in the 1700s. And they came up with a series of workable answers, some more glorious than others. But that was something that they invented. Steve Jobs, again, said it best, is that everything you see in the world around you was invented by somebody no smarter than you. Whether that's our concept of human rights, or even human beings, or freedom, or liberty, or the rule of law. These are all things that somebody invented. Yeah. And they worked remarkably well for a remarkably long time. But they weren't perfect. They weren't handed down by God on 10 tablets, a couple of tablets, or even an iPad. They were just things that people made up that worked. And when they stop working, we need to have the intellectual and emotional courage to say, okay, let's do the work of figuring out why things are the way they are, what was good about that, what was bad about that, what would it take to do better than that, and what's the small steps we can take today to get us to that world. And it's hard. I periodically have these points where it's like, I don't want to have to think that thought, I don't want to have to face that reality. But I made a decision kind of back on 9/11. It's like, okay, something is wrong. I don't know anybody who's taken this seriously enough. If we don't figure this out, it will be bad. I guess I'm appointing me. And I'm not alone. There's people in different movements that I've worked with in various places. But I think all of us have to do that, is to the best of our ability say, hey, what breaks my heart about this current situation? And how do I put in the work necessary to find the right point of leverage that I can make a sustainable, meaningful difference that moves the ball forward? And a big part of it is what I love here about, let's just go live, let's go and let's do it right now. I try as much as possible to document everything I'm doing, my successes and my failures, in public, so that the next guy can learn from me and do better. Yeah. Whether that's my kids or whether that's other people that I run into on the internet. And that to me is actually the definition of a good guy versus a bad guy, is less about sort of individual morality and what ethical code they follow. Is do you show your work? Do you publish your work so other people can check you and improve upon it? Or do you hoard and shame people, hoard your data and shame people who question you? That's to me the only thing I care about, is if you're a horrible villain, but you're honest about it and you're clear so people can see what you're doing, then, I'm willing to respect you and learn from you and work with you, because the one reason the world is falling apart is that the old systems relied on hidden information. If people didn't know that they were being discriminated against, if they didn't know how the other half lived, if they didn't know there were other options available, then they were content. And the more we learned, the more discontent we became. Everything that's happening that we decry, the loss of civility, the political polarization, the tales of injustice, whatever, it's this is mostly a sign of better, more information, and it makes us less happy, but wiser. And it is an ugly trade-off, but that's one of these things that you learn when you grow up. You have to make trade-offs. Do I want to be happy or do I want to be wise? Because sometimes being wise means grieving some really ugly shit. Sorry, it's family-friendly practice. Didn't want to. I do one expletive per conversation, so that'll be my one.
Hey, listen, that's fine with me. I've had people drop, and I've cursed here plenty of times. It's not like a show where it's constantly. It's just sometimes a cuss word is needed in that sentence.
And I try to ration these out to force myself to be disciplined about it. But anyway, the point is that this is what we are discovering is the real price of being human, is living in a world where there is too much information. There is no single solid source of truth you can trust. even our self-knowledge of who we are is remarkably fragile and culturally contrived. And yet, choosing to move forward and finding ways to help each other become more human rather than trying to run away back to an imaginary past. And this is the journey, right? This is the struggle, and it is hard, but it's supposed to be hard. I'd like to say, if doing the right thing was easy, everyone would do it.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely right. It's not. It's not. It's like, even with everything that I've been through in my life, I was widowed at 31. I, it was like I lost my wife, and then a bunch of tragedies one after another. And I was angry for a while, and like you said, I had to get over I had to learn how to grieve properly.
Mm,
And so when I finally did, and I let it go, and I let go of the anger and the resentment and all everything, and I was able to accept that I have no control over everything that happened. These are things. So why am I so angry? And it was just me, the way I dealt with my grief and all that. And so when I was finally ready to get back on that path, and things started shifting when I decided to no longer be on that dark path, and listen to the voice that was speaking to me. Things started shifting.
mm,
I started meeting the right people. I met my wife that I'm with now, um, and it helped me get back into self development. Helped me get into reading and all these other things. And so when it was time for me to get furloughed from work, I was in the mindset of like, okay, what can I do now to keep busy? Like I'm like, I'm here. I'm finally have the time to record the podcast. Let's do it. Let me do it. Let me. And it was 5 minutes. It was 5 minutes my first episode. But it was just going through whatever I went through to now, to where I'm at now. It's like, it's just been an amazing journey.
yeah. Well,
To
congratulations.
Yeah. But I'm excited for what holds for what the future holds. This past year I've networked with some amazing people. Uh, Alex Sanfilippo, who's the creative of Pod Match.
Mm,
I had him on the show, and I'm a big Pod Match user. I'm always promoting and sharing my
yeah,
links.
that's how we met, obviously, for the
Yes,
listeners.
yes. So he's seen the work that I've been doing. He's seen the consistency with me doing my show and me proing Pod Match and everything. And he goes, because I actually got to meet him at Podfest this
Mm,
past May
hmm.
in Orlando, and
Oh, wow.
Podfest is actually coming up in a few weeks. And Alex was so kind and generous to purchase my ticket to Podfest. Like,
Oh,
he actually got me two tickets. He got me one for me and one for my nephew, because my nephew went with me last
oh,
year. And
wow.
it was
That's gonna
his
be
way
quite
of
a that,
it was his
that's
way
gonna
of
be some
thanking me.
serious validation, feeling like you've kind of
Well,
gotten to the inner
because
circle.
this is someone I look up to, and admire what he's doing. And for him to actually recognize that I'm doing this work, and I'm hard, and I'm grinding, and I'm doing the podcast, and I'm promoting and all this,
Yeah.
to have someone like him validated and see that I'm doing the work, and like, dude, here, take this. This is for your hard work. That to me
Oh,
is awesome. I love it. It's a blessing.
yeah.
So it's those moments where you get that, you're like, okay, all right, I'm doing something right.
Yeah.
Something's getting done.
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, look, it is so important, like self care and self compassion, and just taking time to celebrate these milestones. Because like I said, it's a long, hard slog. It's a big hill. It's a heavy lift. It's a big mountain to climb. What's the song says? But if you walk, if you can learn to walk with a song and stop and smell the roses, right? Be thankful for everything, the good, the bad, the ugly. Thankful for the people you meet along the way. What is the WAGMI? We're all going to make it. We just got to watch each other's back and pick each other up when we fall down and have grace and patience. And we're going to get through this.
Yeah. But Dr. Ernie, I appreciate you coming on the show. But now is the time where you get the solo screen and you get to let people know where they can find you at. It's time where you get to plug away.
All right. So you can, most common place to reach me is online on my blog, the number 2 transform.us. It's a WordPress blog, and I post every day, usually theological poems and other things like that. I tweet very sporadically. The most common Twitter handle I use is Stoosin, Stoosin. STUS is an acronym from a long dead project about stewardship of organic systems, about society and civilization and technological innovation, mostly focused on education recently. And so I do have some podcasts which are currently on hiatus right now. But it's been great to have this time with you all here, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
All right. Don't leave yet, Dr. Ernie. I'm just close the show out and we're going to chat a little bit off air.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. All right. So now it is time for shout outs. Big shout out to my Real Wise fam, Brandy J, Poppy J. Love you guys. Big shout out to everybody in the chat. Brian Snow, BS3, Facebook user. I don't know who it was, but big shout out to you. Big shout out to the boss lady, Fina. I love you and appreciate you, baby. Big shout out to Dr. Ernie for coming through and definitely dropping some gems. And as always, a big shout out to all the essential workers out there. God bless y'all. Be safe. You know how your boy Wise does it. Peace out.